Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of Way of the Underhive. This series is dedicated to help brand new players to Necromunda build their starting rosters and learn more about the game mechanics of their favorite gangs. And on today's episode, we will discuss playing a Corpse Guild Outcast gang in your campaigns of Necromunda Ashwaste. We will discuss the gang's strengths as well as their weaknesses, their fighters, their playstyle, and provide critical information that you can use in your starting campaign. And at the same time, we'll also provide you with a 1,400 point roster that you can actually use to create your very first gang and start bringing glory to your Underhive Outcast gang out in the Ashwaste of Necromunda. So playing a corpse harvesting party delegation gang is a really viable option now because of the access to vehicles as well as heavy weapons. So because of that, playing a corpse harvesting Outcast gang could be a lot of fun as well as extremely rewarding. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about playing the strengths and weaknesses of playing a Corpse Guild Outcast gang. Alright, so let's talk about the strengths of actually playing an Outcast delegation gang from the Merchant Guild. So the strengths that you have, of course, are potentially it's one of the most powerful starting gangs in a campaign to use a delegation gang. And the reason why is because a lot of these delegation gangs start off with excellent equipment and skills for almost all their fighters right from the start. So that's actually one of the nice ways about that. You can start with better weapons, better equipment, better skills, and in some cases even better stats with some of your fighters than your opponents will, which gives you a really good edge at the beginning of a campaign. At the same time, you can also take advantage of new weird disciplines that came out from the book of the Outcasts, and you can actually use those weird disciplines out in the Ashwaste as well. So that part is really cool too. Now, probably the biggest strength that's actually impacted Outcast delegation gangs the most has probably been the access to vehicles, especially vehicles with heavy weapons and special weapon options on those vehicles. Some of these delegations actually really suffered from things like lack of heavy weaponry or speed or maneuverability or whatever the case may be. So vehicles with these heavy weapons really give these delegation gangs a real advantage out in the Ashwaste of Necromunda. So now that we're done talking about the strengths of playing a delegation gang, let's go and talk about the weaknesses. Alright, so perhaps the biggest weakness of actually playing a delegation gang that's an Outcast gang is that you cannot take any alliances whatsoever. If you decide to use the delegation as the core of your gang, no alliances are available to you. So for example, if you're a Merchant Guild delegation gang, you can't take Criminal Alliances or Noble House Alliances, and vice versa for all the other ones as well. So that's one of the biggest weaknesses of playing a delegation gang. If you really like using alliances to help your gang out, this might not be the one for you. However though, like I said before in the strengths, it does give you a leg up in the actual beginning of a campaign because you have better fighters, better equipment, and better skills. Now, one of the weaknesses of this gang, of course, is that if you decide to play WYSIWYG, which is an acronym for what you see is what you get type of gangs, this can be quite pricey in my opinion. And the reason why is because, for example, if you were to play a Nauticon siphoning delegation, for example, as the core of your gang, and you want to buy the Forge World miniatures in order to fill that gang, those Forge World miniatures can be quite expensive. So because of that, I would suggest looking for cheaper alternatives or convert your own in most cases. A lot of these delegations have not been manufactured yet, so you could possibly do that, but that's just something you might want to take into account. Me, of course, I would never actually do that. I would just convert my own or find alternate ways to get cheaper miniatures, and that's the thing I would keep in mind when I would be playing a delegation gang. At the same time, these gangs are also very expensive to field in terms of credits. These delegations, like I said, have a lot of skills, a lot of weapons, better stats, and you're going to pay for those. For example, I think the cheapest of the delegations starts off at like 540 credits, I believe. So because of that, it's going to be very, very expensive for you to fill these fighters, but that's the way it goes. And lastly, probably the biggest weakness of actually playing an Outcast delegation gang is that you do have to be aware of the balanced bandwagon. A lot of balanced bandwagon types will scream overpowered or game breaking or unfair and so on and so forth. But of course, once again, just ignore those immaturity of those players, drink the salt of their tears, and just use that to power yourself and destroying your enemies. So these are some of the strengths and weaknesses involved in playing a delegation gang. Alright, so when it comes to delegation gangs, once again, you get to pick from merchant guilds, criminal syndicates, or noble houses, and use those delegations you get from those alliances to form the core of your gang. Leaders also get archetypes and affiliations depending on what delegation you choose. Also, champions also get archetypes as well, so that allows for a lot of customization for your different members of your delegations depending on the affiliations and the archetypes that you choose. Now, once again, remember, archetypes depend on what kind of primary and secondary skills your champions and your leaders receive, while affiliations usually determine what kind of weapons and equipment you can get from the starting list, if not from the trading post as well. At the same time, the nice thing about these delegations is that the members of those delegations gain experience and they can purchase weapons and equipment over time, just like any other gang. So that part is really, really cool. And once again, I have to make sure I stress this a lot. If you decide to take a delegation outcast gang, you cannot make any alliances whatsoever in the future. So just be aware when that actually happens and keep that in mind. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do real quick is talk about which specific merchant guilds you can actually take delegations for in order to create your outcast gang. So there are 5 delegations from the merchant guilds that you can actually use to make your core of your gang. If you'll notice, the Guild of Iron is not on here, and the reason why is because the Guild of Iron consists of D3 plus 2 Hive Scum, so they really didn't have any unique delegations for them. However, from the list that you can choose from, you can either choose the Pyromantic Conclave to be the core of your gang. You could use the Nautican Siphoning Delegation to be the core of your gang. You could use the Slaver Entourage from the Slavers Guild, the Corpse Harvesting Party from the Corpse Guild, or the Toll Collectors from the Guild of Coin. And depending on which of these delegations you choose will form up the core of your gang, as well as what skills and weapons and equipment they have. Now, it should be mentioned that whatever war gear, equipment, and weapons that these delegations have, you can also use those items to outfit your outcast champions as well as your Hive Scum with those same weapons as well. So if you can't get things normally from the trading post or from the starting lists, you can get it from there because purpose of the fact that your delegation can share those materials with the rest of your gang as well. So now that we're done talking about the delegation gangs as well as the merchant guild delegations you can choose from, let's go ahead and talk about your specific merchant guild on the next slide. Alright, so let's talk about the Corpse Harvesting Party, which is your delegation to form the core of your gang. This delegation is going to cost you 550 credits to start off with. So just to let you guys know, this is very much a close combat oriented delegation with powerful fighters in the form of the Corpse Grinders. You have 2 Corpse Grinders in this delegation, and they're pretty powerful and really good at close combat, especially with their chain glaives. Now, there is a downside to a Corpse Harvesting Party, and that comes in the form of the Pale Consort, which is the leader for your gang, as well as the Bone Scrivener, which is the champion. These 2 fighters are weaker, but this can be remedied with better equipment choices, and since you're playing an outcast gang, you can definitely equip these guys any way you want to make them better. At the same time, this list also does allow for interesting items to purchase for your outcast gangs. You get access to Medi-Skulls as well as Gunskulls, which really help out boost up your fighters. At the same time, you get access to stiletto knives as well as a powerful chain glaive close combat weapon, which could really help you out as well. And at the same time, don't forget you also have access to vehicles, which you can equip with special as well as heavy weapons to really fulfill the parts of your gang's strengths and weaknesses to really round them out and make them very competitive on the tabletop. So now that we're done talking about the delegation as a whole, let's talk about your individual fighters. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about the Pale Consort, which is going to be the leader of your gang. This fighter's got a 4-inch movement allowance, as well as 5+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound, 4+ initiative, 1 attack. They have 7 leadership, 8 cool, 7 willpower, as well as 6 intelligence. Now, when it comes to the Pale Consort, this will be the leader of your gang, and the leader is kind of weak. As I said before, the leader, as well as a champion for this gang, is kind of difficult to actually use because their stats are not very good. So because you want to use these guys in more of a leadership type supporting role for your gang, I suggest going with a Mastermind archetype for the Pale Consort, so that way you get access to Savant as well as to the Cunning Trees. And at the same time, the one you really want to focus on is on Medi-Skull. And the reason why is because this fighter actually comes with some pretty good stuff. They have mesh armor for that 5-up armor save. They do have a Laspistol and fighting knife, which is nothing to write home about, but they do come with a Medi-Skull, which could help them with their own injury results. And at the same time, they also come with a Respirator to protect them against gas attacks. So giving this fighter that Medi-Skull skill is really going to help you out to keep your fighters fighting into the fight longer, get rid of those serious injuries, replace them with flesh wounds, etc. as well. Now, the nice thing about this fighter is that this fighter does come with some interesting skills. They do come with a Fearsome skill, which is going to keep the Pale Consort protected from being charged at. And the reason why is because your opponent's got to take a willpower test before they can do so, kind of like Corpse Grinders. So in this sense, your Pale Consort should be relatively safe from being attacked in close combat. What you want to do is you want to spam the Overseer's ability for this Pale Consort, especially when it comes to your Corpse Grinders. That way they can double activate, they can do double sets of activations with close combat, they can be really, really deadly that way. Or use it for your vehicles with their special and heavy weapons. That could also really help you out as well. And like I said before, the Pale Consort's role in your gang is going to be for leadership support, spamming that Overseer ability, as well as providing medical aid for fighters who get injured during the course of a battle. And that's pretty much my rundown on the Pale Consort. Alright, so let's talk about one of your champions. Is going to be the Bone Scrivener. This fighter's got a 4-inch wound allowance as well as 5+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound, 5+ initiative, 1 attack. They have 7 leadership, 8 cool, 8 willpower, as well as 7 intelligence. Now, unfortunately, the Bone Scrivener is one of the worst champions you can actually get in the delegations for the merchant guilds. But at the same time, though, you do have to take this fighter, and my suggestion to use for this guy is to give him the Gunslinger archetype. And the reason why is because you're going to spam the fast shot ability for this character. You're gonna basically give this guy a better weapon, that way he can fire twice per activation and cause a lot of harm. Now, this fighter does have a Stiletto knife, which is a great combat weapon by itself, but that 5 weapon skill is really much gonna kind of neutralize the benefits of having the Stiletto knife. They do have a Gun-Skull for that additional shot with that auto gun at strength 2, which is kind of nice because it's gonna help pin enemies anyways, and they do come with a Respirator, but the main reason why you want the Bone Scrivener is because they're packing a cult icon. With that cult icon, they can do larger group activations, activating 2 fighters at a time, which is going to be really helpful as well. Now, another cool thing about the Bone Scrivener is they do come with a Fearsome skill, so just like your Pale Consort, your opponents will need to roll a willpower test in order to charge the Bone Scrivener, so it makes them a little bit more survivable in close combat. And like I said, the only reason why you want to get this Bone Scrivener is to do those larger group activations with your Corpse Grinders. Now, when it comes for the weapon, I highly suggest purchasing a special weapon for this fighter. A template weapon like a Webgun or a Flamer would be best, especially when you combine that with that fast shot ability. You'll be able to fire twice and with 1 single activation, because it would be a simple action, which is really powerful. You combine that with the Pale Consort's Overseer skill, this person can fire that special template weapon 4 times in a row, which should make it really, really brutal as well. And that's pretty much my take on the Bone Scrivener for your campaigns of Ash Wastes. So now let's talk about the pièce de résistance for the Corpse Harvesting Party, and that comes in the form of your 2 Corpse Grinders. These fighters have a 4-inch wound allowance as well as 3+ weapon skill. They have a 5+ ballistic skill. They have 4 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds, 4+ for initiative, 2 attacks. They have 8 leadership, 7 cool, 8 willpower, as well as 8 intelligence. So this is the reason why you want to build your gang around, is around these Corpse Grinders, because they're actually pretty good post-combat fighters. Now, they come with flak armor, which is all that great, so I highly suggest you upgrade their armor as soon as possible, but they do pack chain glaives, which are really powerful close combat weapons. They got that versatile trait that can cause a lot of damage. At the same time, they also come with crushing blow, so that way one of their attacks has higher strength as well as higher damage as well. Now, when it comes to your Corpse Grinders, if you charge these guys into close combat, they can pretty much one-shot kill enemies in close combat, especially with those chain glaives. They got 2 attacks base. They're charging on into your close combat, giving you that and 1 additional attack. One of those attacks could be Crushing Blow, plus the damage of the Chain Glaive also causes really good to screw up your opponents, so that's really good to help you out. Now, when it comes to your Corpse Grinders, I suggest spamming the Pale Consort's Overseer build on these fighters, so that way they can actually do double sets of charges and double sets of close combat, because they can do 2 sets of activations, which is really nice as well. At the same time, that Chain Glaive's versatile trait is really good to help out in vehicle combat, because they can swing at other vehicles. They won't be able to use the ride-by rules so much because they're not lance weapons and they're unwieldy, but attacking enemy vehicles, very, very powerful that way. And that's my take on the Corpse Grinders for your Corpse Harvesting Party delegation. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the Underhive Outcast Champion real quick. For these gangs, these guys cost 60 credits apiece, and for their stats, they have 5-inch movement, 3+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness. They also have 2 wounds, they have 4 initiative, 1 attack. They have 6 leadership, 7 cool, 8 willpower, as well as 8 intelligence. So let's go on and talk about these guys real quick. So when it comes to the Underhive Outcast Champions, they're very versatile, and the reason why is because their stats are pretty much mediocre. Now, that's both a good and a bad thing. While it might be bad because they can't excel at any one given thing, whether it's shooting or close combat, it does allow them to be able to equip a large variety of weapons and fulfill any role that you need them to fulfill within your gang as well. Now, when it also comes to your guys' Underhive Outcast Champions, archetypes, of course, are very, very important, but the problem with these guys, though, is that their archetypes are very limited for their skills, in my opinion. For example, they have 5 different archetypes they can choose from, but they only have 1 primary skill, and each of those archetypes followed by 2 secondaries. So for example, if you were to take the Brawler archetype, Brawn would be your primary with Ferocity and Leadership as your secondaries. If you were a Gunslinger archetype, Shooting would be your primary with Agility as well as Leadership as your secondaries. For a Survivor archetype, Ferocity would be your primary, followed by Combat and Leadership for your secondaries. For Mastermind, Cunning would be your primary, with Leadership and Savant as your secondaries. And of course, for weird archetypes, your Psychic Disciplines would be your primary, followed by Cunning and Leadership as your secondaries. Unfortunately for the champion, there are no archetypes where combat is a primary, so that is kind of limiting on what you can do. So you won't be getting any skills really to increase your combat abilities, but better weapons and equipment choices could probably help out with that as well. Now when it comes to their equipment and weapons, they can purchase pretty much anything they want to off the trading post, so long as it's within the rarity value of 8 on the trading post. So they are kind of limited some of their choices, but the reason why that is the case is because you can take 1 champion for every 3 hive scum in your gang. So for example, if you have 6 hive scum in your gang, you can take 2 champions. If you got 9 hive scum, you can get 3 champions, and etc. So that's basically where the trade-off kind of comes in. And then finally, of course, we have our Underhive Outcast Hive Scum, which is your typical Ganger and Juvie level fighter for your gang. These guys cost 30 credits apiece. For their stats, they have 5-inch movement, 4+ weapon skill and ballistic skill, 3 strength and toughness. They have 1 wound, 4+ for initiative, 1 attack. They have 8+ for leadership, cool, willpower, and intelligence. And for their skill access, when they become a specialist, their primary is cunning, with ferocity as their secondary. Now, Underhive Scum, Outcast Scum, they're very mediocre, okay? But because of that, they're also very cheap to field. And even though they have very mediocre stats, they count as both gangers and Juvie level fighters for your gang, and because their stats are still so mediocre, they can fulfill many different roles in your gang. You can equip them as shooters, close combat, you can use them as support, you can use them as suicide bombers, especially now that you can also put them on waster dirt bikes. They make great pursuers on waster dirt bikes, for example. So there's a variety of things you can do with these guys to fulfill pretty much any role that you want to. And plus, if you decide to make it into a delegation gang, you can also take better weapons equipment from the delegation lists as well. So that's another cool thing about Outcast Hive Scum as well. Now, unfortunately, you cannot start your campaign with an Outcast specialist, so that part is kind of sad. Almost every single gang can have a specialist except for Outcast, so that part is kind of sad, but that's the kind of the trade-off. Yes, you can't get those specialists, but right at the start, but you'll eventually, you have so many guys you can choose from, and plus your delegations can fulfill those roles anyways, so it's not that big of an issue. So that makes up your guys' Outcast Hive Scum. Alright, so let's talk about the gang list for this one. I call it the BUZZARDS Corpse Harvesting Party Gang for 1,395 credits. So first of all, you can start with your Pale Consort. Your Pale Consort costs you 150 credits. This fighter's got the Mastermind Archetype with Mesh Armor, as well as Laspistol, Knife, Medi-Skull, Respirator, Overseer skill, Fearsome skill, and you need to give this person the Munitioneer skill as well, just because it's going to help you out a little bit when it comes to ammo rolls, especially when you take a look at the weapons we're going to be equipping this vehicle with. After that, you have the Bone Scrivener. It's going to be your champion. It's going to cost you 145 credits. They got the Gunslinger archetype with a Webgun, so that way they can use that powerful close combat, that powerful template weapon. They have a Stiletto knife as well as a Gunskull. They have a Respirator as well as a Cult Icon. They also come equipped with the Fearsome skill and even the fast shot ability, so that way they can fire that Webgun twice per activation, or 4 times if you have Overseer placed upon them. Then you're going to recruit your very first Outcast champion for 180 credits. This fighter's got Mastermind archetype. They're equipped with a Mesh Armor as well as a Grenade Launcher with frag and crack grenades. They also have a Cult Icon as well as the Overwatch skill, so that way they can interrupt enemy activations with that Grenade Launcher. Then you have 2 Corpse Grinders, Corpse Grinder 1 and 2, both going to cost 120 credits. Both are equipped with Flak Armor with Chain Glaives as well as their Crushing Blow skills. After that, you're going to have 2 Outcast Scum, Outcast Scum number 1 and 2. Both are going to cost you 70 credits apiece. Both will have last guns with telescopic sights, so that way they have that +1 to hit at longer ranges with their last guns. And then you're going to have 2 vehicles in this crew, so you are taking away some points from your starting roster. Scum Racer number 1 is going to cost you 395 credits. They're going to be equipped with a Rock Grinder truck with twin-linked autocannons. It also has a Rock Grinder ram for ramming actions as well as Nitro Burner. So this is going to be the real killer in your gang with that twin-linked autocannon. And then you have a second Scum Racer number 2. This first is going to cost you 145 credits. They have a Walker custom vehicle with a transport bed. They also have Nitro Burner for that +1 movement as well as a boarding ramp to provide +1 initiative to your boarding actions. And this is the starting roster for your BUZZARDS Corpse Harvesting Party for 1,395 credits. So let's talk about the gang overview next. Alright, so for the gang overview, this is an extremely versatile gang with excellent close combat as well as excellent shooting for you. Your support fire team and assault fire team are dedicated vehicles, and there's plenty of room to grow as your campaign develops. Now, like I said before, this gang consists of 2 fire teams. You have 1 support fire team and 1 assault fire team. Your support fire team is going to consist of your Pale Consort, your Outcast champion, Outcast Scum number 1, Outcast Scum number 2, and Scum Racer number 1. This fire team engages the enemy at long as well as medium range firing heavy free, as well as special weapons to keep the enemy suppressed. The Pale Consort acts as a support character, spamming the Overseer skill on the Scum Racer's twin-linked autocannons, firing them twice per activation. This will give you 2 rapid-fire strength 7 minus 2 AP, 2 damage knockback attacks that can hit targets up to 48 inches away. That's also why you're going to give your Pale Consort the Munitioneer skill, so in case if an ammo roll pops up, they can re-roll ammo rolls for this vehicle, so that way you can keep on putting out that firepower. Meanwhile, the Outcast champion interrupts enemy activations with their grenade launcher using Overwatch, firing off frag grenades against dismounted fighters and soft targets, and firing crack grenades against vehicles and hard targets. At the same time, Outcast number 1 and number 2 provide sniper fire with their last guns with telescopic sights. As the campaign develops, purchase hotshot last packs for those guns as well for extra trolling and extra damage as well. Now, as for your Assault Fire team, it's going to consist of your Bone Scrivener, Corpse Guild number 1, Corpse Guild number 2, as well as Scum Racer number 2. Now, the Scum Racer maneuvers across the battlefield as quickly as possible to get the crew on their vehicle to board enemy vehicles or dismount, whatever situation calls for the best. The Bone Scrivener spams the fast shot ability to fire the Webgun twice per activation, so that way they can provide some support fire. And from there, Corpse Guild 1 and 2 then charge forward, finish off any enemies with coup de grace or in close combat, especially if they've been webbed. And as the campaign develops, purchase heavy weapons for the Scum Racer number 2. A template weapon would be best. Something like a grenade launcher, for example, would be perfect for that vehicle as well. And that pretty much makes up what I like to call the BUZZARDS Corpse Harvesting Party Gang for your very first campaign of Necromunda Ash Wastes. So in conclusion, playing a Merchant Guild Delegation Outcast gang is some of the great ways to add a lot of variety and diversity within a Necromunda campaign. That was actually one of the cool things that came out with the Book of the Outlands, that you got to see so many new gangs to be able to field into campaigns and keep things fresh, keep things interesting, and show a lot of cool different options you can actually do to make the world of Necromunda really, really awesome. At the same time, by playing a Merchant Guild Delegation gang, you do have a lot of powerful options, and when you throw in vehicles and the equipment and weapons that it can take, you could even make your gang even more powerful as the campaign goes on. So in my opinion, pick your favorite guild, get yourself your very vehicles, whatever flavor you want to, head out to the Ash Waste and start to tame them for the name of your Merchant Guild and the name of Pride and Profit. Now, of course, as always, just watch out for the saltiness of the Balance Bandwagon. They're going to have a huge field day with this, screaming out grieving and overpowered and game-breaking mechanics and all that kind of stuff. But just remember, when you defeat them and they start crying about it, to enjoy those tears and use it to warm your soul. So that's good to do for those of you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is valuable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good to do for this one, you guys. We will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out and stay classy.